He embraced himself in the most conservative party platform ever. And yes, evangelicals, conservatives gave him a mulligan. They let him have a do-over. They said, we'll start afresh with you and we'll give you a second chance.
This week we learned that white conservative evangelicals, the supposed stewards of American morality, have discovered a new biblical doctrine, which apparently only applies to Republican men: the mulligan. And joining me now is Frank Schaeffer, religious reform activist. And Frank, it's an interesting sort of concept. I want to play, and this is cut 8. I've changed my mind for my producers. This is a little bit more of what Tony Perkins had to say about why evangelicals give Donald Trump a pass on so many of the things that he has done.
Conservatives and even, you know, some with no strong ideology are tired. They were tired of being kicked around by Barack Obama and his leftist. And I think they're finally glad that there's somebody on the playground that is willing to punch the bully.
Is that what we're seeing here, that religious people on the religious right, they just want someone to punch the bully being Barack Obama, apparently?
Well, Joy, I guess Barack Obama was a bully because he was black. And you have to remember that everything that has happened since his presidency is a reaction by a core group of white voters. Let's remember, when we talk about evangelicals, that in 1958, Jerry Falwell Sr. was denouncing integration and started a white private school academy to get around the new rulings from the courts. So if you fast forward right now, it isn't that this history does not have a context. The context is American racism. So right now, when Tony Perkins, who, by the way, I grew up with these guys. I knew Tony. He got into politics because of my evangelist father, Francis Schaeffer, who challenged him to take a stand on these issues. So this goes way back in my own family. Tony Perkins seems to have forgotten the basis of Christian theology, not just evangelical, which is to be forgiven. In this tradition, you need to confess first. Donald Trump never confesses to anything, and the one time he apologized for molesting a woman in a criminal assault, which was caught on tape, he then later tried to take the tape back, said he would sue the women who claimed he assaulted them, and called them all liars. This is not a confession. So Tony Perkins has forgotten his own theology and instead replaced it with a theology of revenge on people he disagrees with politically. And that is what is going on here. It's revenge of white America. It is revenge of evangelical right-wingers. And who they want to punch in the mouth is not just black Americans, people, to put it in the President of the United States words, who live in shithole countries, but anybody who disagrees with them. So they're willing, apparently, to put up with anything when it comes to moral degradation to see those ends achieved. And I'm glad he put it in terms of revenge. At least there he misspoke from his point of view, but told the truth.
You know what, let's talk about that, because you know, and I want to talk about not just the words and the things Donald Trump has done, but the policies as well. Polling, the Quinnipiac polling outfit asked whether Donald Trump is a good role model for children. Everyone but Republicans said absolutely not. 99% of Democrats said no. 67% of all Americans said no. 71% of independents said no. 72% of Republicans said yes. Donald Trump is a good role model for children. He still maintains a 61% approval rating among evangelicals. That is down. It was 78% last spring. But do you cotton all of that down to this race issue and immigration, or is there some other reason they're clinging to him?
Well, you know, it's kind of like the frog that gets boiled to death and never realizes that it's going to die. I mean, this is more like the opioid crisis than a political movement. You know, it started with reaction to what they felt is real pain of exclusion in losing the culture war on issues like abortion and gay marriage and so forth. And now they have simply become addicted to this angry and vicious lashing out and reaction. So at this point, they can't kick the habit. They're in deeper than they ever imagined. And so when Tony Perkins says something like he said, if you ran the tape of his own life back to, say, 15 or 20 years ago when I knew him, he would be aghast at anyone saying this. So it's something that's crept up on them.
Yeah, and to the policy point, Jerry Falwell Jr. tweeted something that was pretty shocking, I think, to a lot of people, especially a lot of Christians on Twitter. He said, Jesus said, love our neighbors as ourselves, but never told Caesar how to run Rome. He never said Roman soldiers should turn the other cheek in battle, or that Caesar should allow all the barbarians to be Roman citizens, or that Caesar should tax the rich to help the poor. That's our job. When he got quite predictable blowback on Twitter, he then followed up by saying, all the clowns commenting on my tweet below with their bowels in an uproar can relax, because the other side of the coin is Jesus never told Caesar he shouldn't tax the rich to help the poor either. You can be a good Christian whether you vote conservative or liberal.
Well,
what do you make of that theology?
Well, it amazes me because Franklin Graham, who rebelled against his father's ministry, then came back and went further to the right than his dad ever was. I remind you, Billy Graham was pro-choice in the 1970s when we talked to him about abortion, as was Dr. Criswell of the Southern Baptist Convention. Evangelicals didn't always sign off on this litany of litmus tests, but they went from sending medical teams to Haiti with things like the Samaritan's Purse, which Franklin Graham started, to defending a man who called people who live in black countries and brown countries people who were living in shithole countries. So, you know, this is the same guy that said there were some good Nazis marching. Again, it is the frog getting slowly boiled to death. It's the fact that evangelicals switched from being people who advocated for traditional morality to the chief American defenders of not only relativistic morality, but all that used to be considered sacred being trashed. They're defending a man who has trashed fidelity in his own life and with the words he speaks nationally. They have trashed truth-telling and have embraced this idea of everything being fake news that they disagree with. They have even trashed common decency. So what we're now watching, Joy, as a kind of an appendage of the Trump presidency is one of the greatest downfalls of a religious order, if you want to put it that way, we've ever known. It's only comparable with the first breaking news of the vast international phenomena of child abuse inside the Roman Catholic Church. But at that time, the leaders themselves, at least, were saying, yes, this is bad, and pretending not to go along. Now the evangelicals have gone to the next step. They have actually become the instigators of evil themselves. So when Franklin Graham defends Donald Trump, he is defending a man who is not only destroying the reputation of this country, but who has become the figurehead for, in a bad sense, the Me Too movement. The president himself, an assaulter, a criminal assaulter of women who bragged on it and called anyone who accused him a liar, in a party that now represents the grossest underbelly of human primate behavior. How's that for an ending to a movement that started out talking about saving babies, remaining virgins until marriage, fidelity within marriage, the sacredness of the family, and so forth? It is a reversal that's just mind-boggling.
Absolutely. To say nothing of the idea that the evangelical movement literally is supposed to mean preaching the good news to the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the immigrant, the stranger. Frank Schaeffer, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And up next, the Trump apology tour.